Breaking update coming in now as far as Bangladesh is concerned. There's a notice that's been put up outside the Bangladesh High Commission. The notice reads, due to unavoidable circumstances, all consular and visa services from Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi are temporarily suspended until further notice. Take a look at this report.
Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi has temporarily suspended all consular and visa services. A letter has been put outside Bangladesh High Commission. Let me show you the letter. This is the letter that has been put out outside Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi, which reads, due to unavoidable circumstances, all consular and visa services from Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi are temporarily suspended until further notice. Any inconvenience caused is seriously regretted. So this move has come after 2 days when a group of few protesters, about 20-25 protesters, protested outside Bangladesh High Commission against the killing of Dipu Das, who was killed in Bangladesh. And now this move has come where all services from Bangladesh High Commission has temporarily been suspended.
You're watching the News Hour at 10. Debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Let's quickly open this up and take it across to our guest. Joining us with us is Dr. Anand Raghunathan, author. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at the ORF, is with us. Also joining us at the moment is Sierra Claire, Foreign Policy Analyst. Let me start with you first. Sushant Sareen, do you find it surprising at all that there is this widespread condemnation over the killing or the death of Omar Hadi that is being tweeted by several embassies, at least 3 of them that I've put up on the screen, US, France, Germany, but not a word for the man who's been killed, who's been lynched, whose body that was hung from a tree has been literally burnt by the same mindset, the same Islamist mindset that the US is now openly talking about, but in the case of Bangladesh, it seems to forget. Sushant.
Madhav, what I'm actually surprised about is why all of these embassies did not issue similar notes of condemnation when Osama bin Laden was killed or when Ayman al-Zawahiri was taken out. Because this Hadi fellow was Osama light. He was wanting to become an Osama. Probably his inspiration was drawn from Osama. And again, I'm not surprised by the kind of attitude that we've seen from the Europeans, because frankly, they think that the Hindus in all these countries are untermensch, lesser people, and they need to be they deserve the treatment they are getting, which is why they never open their mouth. You look at the Europeans, they virtue signal all the time. But when it comes to atrocities against Hindus, for example, in Pakistan, have you seen the EU take any position on that, or take any position which actually penalizes the Pakistanis for the kind of pogroms they carry out or the kind of forced conversions they carry out? Nothing. The US is anyways given up on human rights. Thankfully, they've ended their hypocrisy. So that's good. The Americans never really cared about it. Human rights, freedom, democracy is important for the Americans as long as it serves a strategic end. Otherwise, it's perfectly fine. They can give it up. So I'm not surprised about that also. But yes, to some extent, some of these countries will pay some lip service, as they do, but as an afterthought, not because this was a heinous crime carried out by a mob and with the complicity of state institutions in whose custody this person was. They dragged him out. So for those state institutions, it was not their sacred duty to save the life of one person, but to let him go. So this is the attitude, and we have seen the approach of the Europeans as far as this Islamist regime in Bangladesh is concerned. Right. We've seen the kind of approach they've had towards Pakistan and some of the other countries. So I'm not surprised. The only thing, like I said, I'm surprised about is that why they don't shed more tears when Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi or some of these other ISIS...
Let me bring in Sierra on that. Sierra Claire, what would you say to Sushant? Because, the point is this. The point is US champions itself as this global rights defender when it comes to religious freedom, when it comes to minority rights. What happens in the case of Bangladesh? Because somewhere or the other, there will be those who say that this gives credence to the fact that there is some kind of interference happening in Bangladesh from powers from outside, perhaps even the US. We don't know.
Well, I think that, issuing condolences is something that the U.S. has always done. And actually, it's funny because the whole world was up, and freaking out because Trump had issued a statement about Rob Reiner's death in L.A. that they felt wasn't, appropriate condolences. And then when the U.S. does issue appropriate condolences, as anybody should do, when there's a death, then, people are mad about that too. So I think it's just the U.S., stance is that we do not condone violence, and we are sad, at a death, and we're not going to speak bad on somebody's name who's already dead.
Sierra Claire, is Trump anti or pro-Islamist? Because he's spoken about in the context of Bondi Beach just last week that the world needs to stand together against Islamists. Is he pro-anti that? Because that's exactly what Omar Hadi is.
Well, I was just at America Fest this weekend, where our director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, spoke, and she said very clearly in her speech that Islamic extremism is a threat to the United States. So I think the Trump administration is taking that threat very seriously. But Trump also stands for peace, and so he doesn't want to insert the U.S. Where it would cause more harm, would be my guess as to what, what his stance on Islamism is.
Right. Okay, let me bring in Dr. Raghunathan on this. Dr. Raghunathan, let me put it a little differently. What in the lynching of this man qualifies for or does not qualify for it to be condemned in equally strong terms? The manner in which a Hindu man has been picked up, he's been brutalized, he's been lynched, his body hung from a tree, and that body's been burnt. And there are videos to show the kind of brutality, the extent of it. What will it take, for this to qualify as something that needs to be condemned?
That he should have been white and Christian, preferably Protestant. No, I think quips aside, this is not a moment for that. This is a moment for us to realize that the West has always been hypocritical. It's not a question of us outing their hypocrisy. We've done that over the last 60, 70 years. I mean, this is the same West that wanted to stop us from buying Russian energy, while at the same time they were buying more Russian energy. This is the same West that has slapped sanctions on the two Russian oil majors so that we could not get enough oil from those Russian oil majors, even as the UK and the Germany have been exempted from those very sanctions by the United States so that they continue to buy oil from those very oil majors. This is the hypocrisy. It just doesn't run in their veins. It runs in their pipelines as well. But should we be worried about it? Not anymore. Because as Sushant rightly said, when they go and do as they please as far as terrorists are concerned, from al-Zawahiri to Osama bin Laden to al-Baghdadi, and it's strange coming from Sierra saying that, we do not condone violence. I'm sure she heard when Trump announced that al-Baghdadi was killed. He said he died like a dog. This is how US treats its terrorists. But our terrorists are freedom fighters for them. You saw it in the Bondi Beach when every newspaper in the West and in Australia condemned those two gunmen as terrorists, rightly so. But whenever there is any terror attack on Indian soil, the same terrorists become gunmen or militant. Like, they're looking at this terrorism through some rose-tinted glasses. But it's away from the hypocrisy. I want to talk about 30 seconds what we have done. Madhav, strength is to be feared before it is demonstrated. Have we made sure that it is feared? I'm afraid not. In the case of Pakistan, we did. We have put the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. We have made 3 or 4 other new doctrines. We have destroyed their nuclear doctrine. What in the case of Bangladesh have we done? And what have we done for the Bangladeshi Hindu refugees? There is not a single detention or relief camp this side of the border when they are being raped, pillaged, they are fleeing for their lives.
Right.
I want a number from my government. How many Bangladeshi Hindus have we taken in as refugees ever since the genocide began a year ago? 1, 10, 20,000, 10,000? How many?
Mark Burns, the problem is twofold. One, you have an individual for whom this condemnation is being put out, who's basically an Islamist. He's talking about a greater Bangladesh. He wants to expand into India, Burma, so on and so forth. So his intentions aren't exactly democratic. He's actually somebody who wants to encroach upon other neighboring countries, and he's put out maps. He's put out all of this, and he practices a very violent ideology. That is number one. And point number two, why should there not be equal criticism of a Hindu man who's been hung, who's been lynched, and who's been literally burnt, whose dead body has been burnt? It doesn't get more barbaric than this. Why not any criticism of that?
Well, again, first of all, the situation that's happening in Bangladesh is very, very sensitive. Again, supporting human life is not equate to anti-India or anti-India policies. The United States, as was said earlier, is consistent in any acts of violence, especially amongst a political student who represented a democratic process. Whether they're Hindu, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Christian, if they are assassinated for political beliefs, the United States is going to condemn it. It just happened here in the United States of America with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who was not a diplomat, but was clearly a strong political leader that impacted the entire world. And so the United States, we got to understand that this is not an endorsement, a political endorsement. This is a humanitarian act to simply say we condone violence of any nature, especially regarding political voices. And so the United States is consistent in doing that. But this doesn't mean we're anti-India. It doesn't mean that we endorse the belief system, to offer condolence from a humanitarian point of view. It's not in a political endorsement. Again, democracy requires consistency, and the United States is consistent at condoning any acts of violence, especially regarding political assassination.
So what happens in the case of this Hindu man who's been lynched? Why no condemnation there, sir?
For, again, a Hindu man that's been lynched, well, that'd be condemned. It is evil. It is absolutely evil. And no one should ever be, for this man to be hung and burned, for his beliefs, that is absolutely to be condemned at the highest level. Again, all acts of violence is evil. All acts of violence should be condemned. And we're doing it even right now on this national broadcast, regardless of his faith. I, as a spiritual diplomat, represents all faiths, and that includes the Hindu faith. We stand against it, and we support, that justice be done for this Hindu man that was violently killed and violently assassinated.
Sushant, I want you to tell our panelists what exactly Omar Hadi really stands for. A, he's an expansionist. B, the kind of violent ideology that we're seeing him and several of his ilk propagate, which perhaps, he was ultimately here to pay for with the kind of attack that has eventually taken his life. The point is, individuals like that continue to preach whatever they can, against India, against Sheikh Hasina. And it's a strange democratic model because they don't want the former prime minister to come back. Sheikh Hasina is running helter-skelter, has got political asylum in India just because of the individuals and this kind of mindset. Sushant.
Martin, before I come to your question, and I will come to it, I think it's very important to make it very clear. The Deepu Das thing was a very heinous crime, but that's not the only one. There are hundreds of such murders that have taken place, lynchings, rapes, mass rapes of Hindu women being dragged out from their homes and being raped by these Islamists in Bangladesh. And there's not been a peep from either the Europeans or the Americans. So, let's not make this only about Deepu Das. This was a horrific crime, but it's not just one person who has died. Over the last 1 year since this, I don't want to use the word, but this fellow who's got the Nobel Peace Prize, and they somehow have this knack of giving the Nobel Peace Prize to the worst criminals in the world. And this fellow has got the Nobel Peace Prize. He was a thief anyways, but he was given the Nobel Peace Prize because the Democrats loved him. this guy has presided over the worst kind of killings of Hindus in Bangladesh over a year and a half. So that is one. And I don't think we should ignore all the other crimes that have happened in Bangladesh. Over 100 journalists or 200 journalists have been booked on charges of murder. Can you believe this? I can understand you book a journalist on charges of, fake news. You book a journalist on charges of bribery or something. They've been booked on charges of murder. Can you believe this? And yet not a peep from anybody in the world. It's almost as though what Muhammad Yunus does is perfectly kosher. It's perfectly fine. But to come back to your question about Hadi, again, it boggles the mind that at one level you tell us that you are against Islamic extremism. At another level, how many other Islamic extremists, when they die in the world, say in Nigeria or 500 other places in the world, when they die a violent death, do you condemn? Do your embassies condemn it, issue notices, fly flags on half-mast? How many of them do you do? You don't. So why in this particular case? Have you seen what Hadi stood for? He was essentially Abu Bakr Baghdadi or Osama bin Laden light. That is what he aspired to. That is what his ideology was. That is what he was espousing. He wants to cleanse Bangladesh of the Hindus. And he is not the only one. There are at least 500 others like him who prancing around like student leaders who are preaching that same poisonous, hateful ideology. And yet you are saying that he was a bona fide political leader, student leader. He was killed for his political beliefs. No, he was not killed for his political beliefs. There was some kind of a tussle, and that is why it was done. So please get your facts right.
Well, let me just say this. I think it's...
one by one, please. Pastor Burns,
Okay. I think it's a little bit hypocritical, if I could be open and honest, what you're speaking about, Hadi, and his desire for removing the Hindus from Bangladesh, when in reality, there are Christians in India right now that are being heavily persecuted. There are laws that are attacking Christian beliefs right now in India.
So what's the hypocrisy here? He's speaking out very openly, sir. He's speaking out very openly against Hindus, against India.
Just denied a visa in India.
Against Christians as well.
You just denied the visa.
Madhav, denying a visa is not the same as
ground in your country. So to talk about, it's hypocrisy to talk about that. Now, nobody should kick out no faith. Every faith should have a right to practice their faith, whether it be Hindus, whether it be Muslims, whether it be Christians.
No, practicing the faith is not a problem at all, sir.
Talk about
there are people of different faiths here in India. The problem is when you start preaching violence, when you start having extraterritorial ambitions, Mr. Burns, that becomes extremely controversial. In the case of Osman Hadi also, that's the kind of ideology that he stands for, unfortunately.
That are happening in India. You got to call all hypocrisy.
Dr. Ranganathan.
No, all said and done, I truly appreciate the forthrightness of my American friends on the panel here, and that's the reason why I want to ask a very simple question. This is a person called Javlani. Your government had a $10 million reward on his head. Can you see it says, "Stop this terrorist"? Do you believe that he is a terrorist, even though right now he is the president of Syria? Do you believe he's a terrorist, sir?
No, he's not a terrorist. He once was a terrorist. But now the President Trump wanted to open that door and give him an opportunity. Because of the current president of Syria, we knew where Salam Ali was. Because of the current president of Syria, he gave us the intel to take out Salam Ali, to take out one of the most evil terrorists in the world. We took him out. Donald Trump took him out because of the current president of Syria.
As I said, thank you, sir, for your forthrightness. So if tomorrow, let's say, hypothetically, Osama bin Laden had become the president of Afghanistan, would you have treated him as a terrorist or not as a terrorist? Simple question.
No, because he bombed the 9/11. He was responsible for killing Americans, lots of Americans. But the reality of it is, Christians right now are being persecuted in India right now by Hindus. That's a fact, and you got to deal with it. You got to call it out. So if you're going to be fair, talk about all of it. Don't talk about the hypocrisy in Bangladesh while your own country is killing Christians, is killing Muslims, in your own country.
Sushant.
You want to expel.
Sushant.
You block a
No,
Christian
I don't think-
pastor,
Clearly-
Franklin Graham, from
clearly,
Sir, Black Lives Matter campaigns also happen in the United States. So let's not get so preachy. And let's not start lecturing others. There are issues. All democracies have their problems, but let's not start equating that with a global Islamist ideology, because the US believes that Islamism is a global problem and Islamists are a global problem in terms of radical Islam. Then certainly they cannot have this double standards. Sushant Sareen.
Yeah, so one, I think it's rather disingenuous of the gentleman to equate the denial of a visa, and there are very good reasons for denying a visa, with the lynching of a man, and to equate it with the same kind of hateful practices. There are 500 other Indian preachers who want to go to the US, and the US does not give them the visa, right? So one, that is a completely fallacious argument. Secondly, a fallacious argument, another one. Now, there are no Christians being killed out here. There might be some law and order issues which happen in various places. But please tell me, the Hindu population in Bangladesh was 22%. It is now 7%. Please tell me, where did they all go? Has there been a similar exodus out of India of Christians? Or has the Christian population in India risen? Number three, the laws which you talk about, obviously you are ignorant completely about what are those laws, and somebody has fed you something and you've just taken it on off it. But what are those laws? Those laws are not to prevent preaching or propagating the faith. They are to prevent what we call conversions by spurious methods. That you are trying to convert communities through spurious methods, through bribery, through all kinds of other allurements, which I don't think even you people should be admitting. But that is what you do, because your business model is something else. You are not in the business of preaching and spreading the word of Christ. You are in the business of harvesting souls. That's what gets you revenue. So that is your business model. So please don't preach to me what happens in India.
Yeah. I would quickly bring in Sierra before we wrap this debate. Sierra, this is not the only social media post. There's another post on X of the US Embassy Dhaka. I'm just going to read out 2 sentences, so bear with me. And I'm going to ask you something right after this. Media reports that the body of youth leader Sharif Osman Hadi will land in Dhaka at 6:05 p.m. today, Friday, December 19th. His funeral prayer is expected to be held at Manik Mia Avenue in front of the National Parliament building after Duhar prayer around 1400 hours on Saturday, December 20th. Extremely heavy traffic is expected in the area and throughout Dhaka. US citizens should practice vigilance and remember that gatherings intended to be peaceful can turn confrontational and escalate into violence. You should avoid demonstrations and exercise caution in the vicinity of any large gatherings. I'm at a loss to understand whether this is the US Embassy in Dhaka or the Dhaka Traffic Police. Such detailed information, the date, the time, the location. What's going on? One doesn't normally see this happening from any embassy. Advisories are one thing, but this looks like an invitation.
Well, I've gotten emails like that from various embassies when I travel, because the embassies do notify Americans of any, as they said, demonstrations or potential, large gatherings and things that could become a security issue. So I'm just reading that as the U.S. Embassy is trying to notify American travelers what might be going on.
All right. It's a normal routine equivocation. Do you think that, Sushant Sareen, that really adds up? That this is something that you normally see? I certainly have not seen such a detailed advisory, for anything that I've seen, at least in the national capital here in Delhi.
No, normally, unless there is a very big demonstration happening, and there was an apprehension of that in Dhaka. So maybe they had some more information, and that is why they were volunteering more information. Otherwise, it's normally a 3 or 4 sentence kind of a thing, that you should avoid crowded places, or there is anticipation of violence breaking out. Normally, those advisories are pretty normal. The Indian government also routinely issues advisories. So to that extent, I don't see anything really, out of the ordinary in that particular advisory. Yes, it's a little more detailed than what it normally is.
All right, let's leave it there. Dr. Ananthanathan, Sushant Sareen, Mark Pern, Sierra Claire, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. Certainly all eyes will be on whether there will be another tweet, another social media post, or another statement equally condemning the brutal and barbaric lynching of Deepu. We're going to be watching out for that as well. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.